A billionaire invites the black housekeeper's son to play chess as a joke. She has no idea that the boy is a genius. "Come here, boy. Show me how you people play chess in the slums, will you?" Emily Anderson's voice rang through the living room of her Beverly Hills mansion, laced with the arrogance of someone who had never had to earn anything with her own hands. DeShawn Michel, 17 years old, was helping his mother Latasha serve guests at a charity party when the billionaire woman decided to make him the evening's entertainment. The other guests, business people, politicians, and their wives giggled behind flutes of expensive champagne. Emily was hosting the event to raise funds for underprivileged youth, though it was clear she hadn't expected one of them to be serving food in her home. The irony delighted her. "I bet he at least knows how to move the pieces," Emily said, pointing to the Italian chess set on the coffee table. "This will be fun, watching the kid face someone who's actually been taught how to play properly." Mr. Logan, owner of 3 hotel chains, whispered to his wife, "I bet he doesn't even know the knight moves in an L shape." Laughter rippled out like waves across the surface of a smug little lake. Latasha, DeShawn's mother, bowed her head, her fingers tightening around the silver tray. 20 years of cleaning this house, raising her son alone on a maid's wages, and now she had to watch him be made a joke in front of her employer's wealthy friends. She had known Emily since she was a child once, a stubborn little heiress, now a domineering socialite. "Latasha, you can stop serving for a moment," Emily commanded with a syrupy false sweetness. "I want you to watch your son play. This will be an educational moment for both of you." But DeShawn remained still for a few seconds. His dark eyes weren't just analyzing the chessboard, they were seeing through every face in the room. At 17, DeShawn already understood that silence revealed more than 1,000 words ever could. And in that moment, what he saw was a room full of privilege, none of them aware of who they were about to face. DeShawn's posture made a few people stop laughing. There was a strange stillness, the calm before a storm. His fingers moved instinctively, as if visualizing a move on an invisible board. "Of course, Mrs. Anderson," DeShawn replied in a calm voice that made several guests glance at each other, curious. "It would be my honor." Emily smiled with satisfaction, settling into the leather chair like a queen preparing to watch a gladiator fight. "Wonderful. I bet you've never played on a board like this before, have you? Genuine Italian marble. Each piece is worth more than, well, you get the idea." State Representative Grace Taylor, sitting near the window, muttered, "Emily, are you sure this isn't a bit cruel? The boy's going to be humiliated." "Nonsense," Emily replied, adjusting her diamond earrings. "This is a learning opportunity. He'll be able to tell his friends he once played chess in a real mansion." What Emily didn't know, and was about to find out in the worst possible way, was that the boy from the poor neighborhood had spent the last 8 years studying every opening, every tactic, every trap ever laid by grandmasters. While his classmates played video games, DeShawn devoured chess books borrowed from the public library and replayed legendary matches on an old computer he had repaired himself. In the quiet mornings when his mother worked night shifts, DeShawn analyzed games by Kasparov, Fischer, Carlsen. He memorized over 200 openings and knew by heart the 50 most famous defenses in chess history, but most importantly, misses. Emily had no idea that she was about to be humiliated by the very boy she had dismissed right in front of all her powerful friends. As Emily began arranging the pieces with theatrical gestures, DeShawn studied each guest in the room. There was something in his gaze that made it clear he wasn't just preparing for a chess game, he was preparing to rewrite every assumption in that room about who truly deserved respect. Emily chose the white pieces with the confidence of someone who had never lost anything that truly mattered. "I always play white, darling." "Family tradition," she said, completely ignoring the fact that in professional chess, color is decided by a coin toss. DeShawn nodded quietly and arranged the black pieces with a precision that made Mr. Logan frown. Each piece was placed exactly in the center of its square, perfectly aligned, as if this Italian marble board were just one of hundreds he had faced before. "Let's make it more interesting," Emily announced to the guests. "If the boy manages to surprise me even once, I'll donate 1-0 to some public school or whatever." Laughter rose again, but this time, DeShawn lifted his head and smiled a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Latasha shivered. She knew that smile. It was the one DeShawn wore as a child whenever someone underestimated him at school competitions. The same smile he had at age 12 when he told her she didn't need to help with his math homework anymore. Emily opened with E4. "Indian Fortress, darling. A classical opening, we learned it at Harvard," she said, as if teaching a child how to tie his shoes. DeShawn responded instantly. "C5, the Sicilian defense." The room fell into an unusual silence. This wasn't the move of someone who merely knew how the pieces moved. It was the move of someone who understood theory. "Interesting," Representative Taylor whispered, leaning forward. Emily hesitated for 3 seconds, long enough for DeShawn to recognize that she had memorized a few openings, but didn't understand the principles behind them. She played the knight to F3 in the style of someone taught at an elite club. While Emily pondered her next move, DeShawn remembered, when he was 9, he had found a torn-up chess book in the library's trash, slipped it into his backpack, and asked his mother to teach him the basic rules. "Midge, why do you want to learn that?" his mother asked, exhausted after a double shift. "To be like the rich kids, Mom. They always say they're smarter than me." At the time, Latasha was making only $600 a month. There was no money for classes, no computer, nothing, but there was the public library, which DeShawn treated as his second home. Every day after school, he walked 3 kilometers to study historic chess games in dusty books no one else ever touched. Emily played D3, a timid move, reflecting her conservative nature both in chess and in life. DeShawn responded with Nick6, developing his pieces with clear intent. Each move took him less than 5 seconds, as if he were following a script long ago committed to memory. "The boy moves too fast," Emily commented. "In real chess, people are supposed to think carefully before they play." At that moment, DeShawn pulled a psychological move. He pretended to think for 15 seconds, then played G6, setting up a fianchetto for his bishop. "See?" Emily turned to show off to the guests. "He doesn't have the patience to really think. Just what I expected." But Mr. Logan, who had played collegiate chess 40 years ago, spotted the signal. "Emily, the boy's setting up for a hyper-accelerated dragon." "What?" she frowned. "That sounds made up." "A variation of the Sicilian defense. Very complex." Emily's shoulders tensed. Nonsense. He probably saw it in a movie. But with each move, something unsettling began to take shape. DeShawn wasn't just reacting, he was controlling the tempo of the game. The pieces unfolded with flawless precision, crafting a tactical harmony that turned the board into a visual symphony. Latasha stood in the corner of the room, her heart racing. She knew her son was gifted, but she had never seen him face someone who believed themselves a master. For the first time in 20 years of working in that house, she saw fear in Emily Anderson's eyes, the fear of realizing she might not be as exceptional as she always believed. Every time Emily tried to humiliate DeShawn, she was only feeding the very force she couldn't see, a quiet strength forged through injustice. Those privileged guests had no idea that every word of condescension they uttered was helping write the verdict against themselves on a 64-square stage, about to host one of the most humiliating defeats in Beverly Hills high society history. DeShawn's 10th move made Mr. Logan choke on his whiskey. The boy had sacrificed a pawn, In what seemed like a naive move, but anyone who had truly played the game could see the deadly trap unfolding. "Emily," Logan whispered urgently. "This boy's no amateur." But Emily was too eager to prove her superiority to heed the warning. "Relax, darling. He probably just memorized a few moves off the internet. I'll have him beaten in 5 minutes." At that moment, DeShawn did something no one expected. He stood up and walked toward his mother, who stood silently in the corner, her hands tightly clasped. "Mom," he said softly, but his voice carried through the tense air. "Remember when you told me that one day I'd show them who I really am?" Latasha nodded, eyes shimmering. She remembered it clearly. It was DeShawn's 15th birthday. She hadn't had enough money to buy a cake. DeShawn had found her crying in the kitchen and promised that one day he would change everything. "That boy has more dignity than all of us put together," Representative Taylor whispered to her husband, watching the scene between mother and son. Emily tapped her fingers on the table, visibly annoyed. "Shall we continue? I do have other things to do." DeShawn returned to the board, but he was no longer the timid teenager dragged out as a joke. He was a young man carrying years of sacrifice, quiet study, and a will forged through adversity. DeShawn's 11th move was executed with surgical precision, and for the first time, Emily frowned. He had set up a fork. If she protected her king, she would lose her queen. If she saved the queen, checkmate would follow in 3 moves. That's not possible," Emily stammered, looking at the board seriously for the first time since the match began. Logan saw the heart of it. "Emily, you're being outplayed by a kid who's probably never even stepped foot inside a professional chess club." While Emily scrambled for an escape, DeShawn studied each face in the room. Representative Taylor had stopped sipping her champagne, now leaning in with full attention. The hotel magnate had put away his phone. Even Mr. Logan's wife, who had been browsing a fashion magazine, couldn't take her eyes off the board. Latasha recognized that look. It was the same look DeShawn had when, at age 12, he discovered the chess section at the public library. The same look he had when he studied 5 hours straight on a slow, aging computer. The look that got him up at 5 a.m. to practice tactics before school. Emily made a desperate move to escape the trap, but it was far too late. DeShawn had calculated that exact scenario 6 moves ago. "Check," he said simply, moving his queen into a position that created 3 separate paths to victory. The living room fell completely silent. Emily looked at the board, then at DeShawn, then back at the board. Her hand trembled not from fear, but from the fury of realizing she was being utterly dismantled by someone she had dismissed. "Where did you learn that sequence? No one picks that up on their own," she snapped, grasping for an excuse. DeShawn smiled for the first time since the match began. "You're right. I learned it from Garry Kasparov." "Kasparov taught you?" Logan asked, stunned. "Not directly," DeShawn replied, moving his piece into the final position. "But I studied 832 recorded games of his. This sequence he used it against Karpov, Game 23, World Championship, 1984. Emily glanced around the room, searching for support, but all she saw was silent disapproval. For the first time in her life, no one was impressed by her. Latasha stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. "My son wakes up at 5 every morning to study before school. He walks nearly 10 kilometers to the library because we don't have internet at home. When I work double shifts, he studies by candlelight because our electricity gets cut off." The entire room fell silent. DeShawn looked at his mother with love and quiet determination, so much so that a few guests had to look away in shame. "Checkmate," DeShawn said softly, placing the queen on the final square. Emily stared at the board for a long moment, as if hoping the pieces might magically rearrange themselves. When she finally looked up, DeShawn was watching her with the same calm gaze he'd had from the start, but the atmosphere in the room had completely shifted. No one saw DeShawn as entertainment anymore. They saw him as someone who had just rewritten everything they thought they knew about talent, class, and worth. And Emily, they looked at her with confusion and disappointment, something she had never experienced before. What Emily Anderson didn't yet realize was that today's game was only the opening move in a much larger match, one where every social rule she had taken for granted would be challenged. And the boy she had once underestimated would prove that true dignity had nothing to do with names or bank accounts. Emily stared at the board for 15 seconds, a stretch of time that felt eternal. Her trembling fingers touched the toppled king, as if hoping she could reverse checkmate with some miracle. The room was so silent, the ticking of the 15-0 wall clock could be heard clearly. "It was just luck," Emily muttered. "He probably memorized that sequence from somewhere." Logan stood up and walked to the board. "Emily, that boy just executed a variation of the Sicilian defense I haven't seen in 40 years of playing chess." Representative Taylor pulled out her phone to record. With the instincts of a seasoned politician, she instantly recognized the viral power of this moment, a racist billionaire being publicly humbled by a genius she had dismissed. "I won't accept this," Emily snapped, rising to her feet and knocking over several pieces. "Something's not right. No one learns like that on their own. Someone trained him just to humiliate me." DeShawn remained seated, calm and composed. "Would you like to play again, ma'am?" he said. "I can play anyone here, or all of you at once if you'd prefer." The room stirred at his words. It sounded arrogant, but after what they had just witnessed, no one dared doubt him. "Now that's arrogance," Emily snapped, her face red with anger and humiliation. "A boy from the slums doesn't get to talk to his betters like that." At that moment, Latasha stepped forward. For the first time in 20 years, she looked Emily straight in the eye without bowing her head. "Mrs. Anderson," she said, her voice steady, "my son isn't from the slums. We're working people. He's not arrogant. He's honest about what he can do, something you clearly can't manage with yourself." The room tensed to its breaking point. Many guests exchanged uneasy glances, realizing they were witnessing something far greater than just a chess match. Emily turned to Latasha, furious. "You dare speak to me like that? Have you forgotten your place in this house?" "No," Latasha replied calmly. "I remember exactly what I'm worth." Logan stepped in, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. "Emily, maybe it's time we admit the boy truly has talent." Emily let out a bitter laugh. "Don't you get it? All of this was staged. Someone trained him just to make me look like a fool." DeShawn stood up. His voice carried a quiet maturity that made every adult in the room fall silent. "Mrs. Anderson, do you want the truth? No one trained me to embarrass you. I've spent the last 8 years studying chess because I dreamed of playing with people who respect the game. People who understand that talent doesn't care about skin color, social class, or last names." He looked at each person in the room. "When you invited me to play like we do in the slums, I thought I had a chance to prove I deserved respect. But now I understand you never wanted a fair match. You wanted a public shaming." Representative Taylor stopped recording, her eyes fixed on DeShawn. "How old are you, young man?" she asked. 17, ma'am." "And how long have you been studying chess seriously?" 8 years. Taylor looked at Emily with a mix of astonishment and reproach. "Emily, you were just defeated by a self-taught teenager, someone your family employs. A teenager you invited to play chess as a joke." Emily felt the weight of every gaze. For the first time in her life, they weren't looking at her with admiration or envy, but with judgment. I didn't know he played seriously," she mumbled. "That's not the issue," Logan replied, his tone sharp with disapproval. The issue is, you invited him to play under the assumption he would lose easily. Why? Because he's the housekeeper's son? Because he's black? Because he's not rich? The room fell utterly silent. DeShawn calmly began resetting the pieces, each move precise and deliberate. Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. There was a lot to learn from that match. Then he turned to his mother. Mom, can we go now? I have school tomorrow. Latasha nodded and removed her apron. But before leaving, she turned back and said one final thing. Thank you, Mrs. Anderson, for showing me that my son deserves to be in places far better than this. She and her son began walking toward the door. Representative Taylor called out after them, DeShawn, would you be interested in a scholarship? I know a few universities that would be very eager to have someone like you. DeShawn stopped and gave his first genuine smile of the evening. I'd be very interested, ma'am. Mrs. Taylor handed him a business card. Call me on Monday, okay? Emily stood frozen, still struggling to comprehend how she had just lost everything. In less than an hour, she had gone from a respected hostess to the woman who publicly belittled a prodigy in front of the very people whose respect she once took for granted. The door closed behind DeShawn and Latasha. The remaining guests exchanged awkward, silent glances. Logan was the first to rise. I think I'll be heading out as well. One by one, the others followed, leaving behind only a few cold handshakes and disappointed stares. Emily remained alone in the room, still staring at the chessboard, where her arrogance had been meticulously dismantled by a teenager she had dismissed. But what she didn't yet know was this: tonight had only been the opening move in a much larger game. A game in which DeShawn Michel would not only rewrite his own future, but challenge the entire system of privilege that people like her had always taken for granted. That night, DeShawn walked beneath the Beverly Hills sky, holding in his hand the business card that would change his life. In his mind were not just chess moves, but the strategy for a far greater game. A game to prove that true worth can't be bought with money, it is forged through character. 6 months later, DeShawn Michel walked the halls of Stanford University on a full scholarship in engineering. Representative Taylor had kept her promise, connecting him not only with academic opportunities, but with a world of people who could see talent beyond circumstance. The video of that night had gone viral, with over 3 million views in just 2 weeks. Not because anyone had filmed the match, but because Taylor herself shared the story on social media, turning DeShawn into a symbol of perseverance and Emily into a cautionary tale of how not to act when given privilege. Headlines across the internet read, "Teen prodigy defeats racist billionaire in chess match." The comments poured in, "Shame on that woman. That boy deserves every opportunity in the world." Emily Anderson became a pariah within her own social circle. The golf club revoked her membership under pressure from its members. 3 charities removed her name from upcoming events. Even Logan, a friend of decades, began avoiding her at gatherings. At a dinner party in Malibu, Logan's wife remarked, "Emily was always arrogant, but I never imagined she could be so cruel, humiliating a child in front of all those people." The most painful part for Emily wasn't the public humiliation, it was realizing that DeShawn had never sought revenge or fame. He had simply played chess naturally, effortlessly, using the skill he had quietly honed over many years. The shame she felt was not something inflicted on her. It was the consequence of her own prejudice. Latasha was promoted to head of housekeeping at a 5-star hotel in Santa Monica, with triple the salary and full health benefits. It wasn't charity, it was recognition. Recognition for a professional, resilient woman who was finally being seen for who she truly was, by people who judged with fairness. DeShawn founded a free online chess program for underprivileged youth, connecting them with college mentors. Within just 6 months, Over 200 kids were learning not just how to move pieces, but how to navigate life with strategies no classroom could teach. Chess taught me that every piece has strategic value, DeShawn shared on CNN. And Mrs. Emily Anderson taught me that some people have to lose everything to learn what truly matters. When asked if he held any resentment toward the woman who once tried to humiliate him, DeShawn simply smiled the same calm smile he wore that night. Resentment is like a piece that blocks your next move. I prefer to focus on what I can build. Emily watched that interview alone in the mansion, now quiet and empty of friends. For the first time, she truly understood what she had lost that night. Not just a chess game, but the chance to become a better human being. Logan called Emily just once after the incident, only to say, "Emily, you created that situation." And DeShawn, he responded with the kind of grace you should have shown from the start. That lesson echoed far beyond Beverly Hills. DeShawn proved that true character doesn't come from a last name or a bank account. It comes from integrity, forged through adversity, and proven through action. He turned prejudice into purpose, turned humiliation into fuel. Today, when DeShawn looks toward the future, he doesn't see barriers built by others. He sees opportunities he's created himself. Emily once tried to make him feel small so she could feel grand. But in the end, she showed the world something else entirely. That true greatness is measured by how you lift others up, not how you push them down. Latasha now keeps a framed photo of her son receiving his first honorary award at Stanford. Beside it hangs a certificate from the chess program that's changed thousands of lives. Achievements no money could buy, no prejudice could erase. And DeShawn understands the best revenge isn't tearing someone down for looking down on you. It's building something so remarkable, their pettiness becomes irrelevant. Emily Anderson once tried to turn him into entertainment, but DeShawn Michel became an inspiration. And that difference is what defines not just who wins the game, but who wins at life.